among the worst films of the year.
Worse, it reeks of intellectualized noirishness.
It stinks. It stinks.
So, I saw the Aquaman film, and it was good. It was very good. Aquaman, produced by Warner Brothers and starring Jason Momoa, Amber Heard, Willem Dafoe, Patrick Wilson, Nicole Kidman, Dolph Lundgren, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, and Temuera Morrison, and produced by Warner Brothers Studios, is actually probably their best work in a long time. Like, structurally, in terms of a film, it's better than Wonder Woman. Now, of course, it doesn't have the same meaning as Wonder Woman, since this is a story about an Atlantean finding his culture and becoming a hero within it. And there, of course, is no such thing as Atlanteans, nor are there any culturally specific basis for this group of people. The Mascarans are at least Hellenistic. Wakanda is, of course, Central African. But the Atlanteans are kind of like this brilliant combination of a truly alien culture with hints towards various representations of Atlantis in the past. Like, you can see a little bit of Mike Mignola's Disney interpretation of Atlantis in the designs and the appearances. And that really is the strength of the film, I think, is its more in-depth look into the world around Aquaman than simply the character going through and interacting with it. And that's by nature of the story itself. I'm not going to go into spoilers whatsoever, but the trailer itself tells you that it's the story of a guy who has been separated from his culture and is coming back to it. It's like the basic story of a second-generation immigrant who is trying to reconnect with their original culture, or in this case, doesn't want to actually reconnect with their original culture, but has to because it's a comic book movie. And there's a big supervillain. There are two great big supervillains in this film, actually. And they finally break the DC streak of big, dull, gray CGI monster. But we'll get into that in a minute. Director James Wan really knows what he's doing with these kinds of films. This could have been a washed-out piece of crap very easily. It could have gone the way of John Carter of Mars, where you have all the pieces there that should work, but it just doesn't come across correctly. And I think James Wan did the right thing by effectively stealing a lot of parts of films that did work. He steals a little from Wonder Woman. He steals a little from Black Panther. He steals a little from various other interpretations, as I said, of Atlantis in the past. And he steals from other comic books in terms of how they deal with these characterizations. For instance, there's a moment in the film when I was watching that I forgot it was Nicole Kidman and not Michelle Pfeiffer, because they are both white-haired mother figures who are lost. And it actually worked. It was such a blatant either copy or example of synchronicity that it didn't feel like, oh, you're just copying that because it worked. Because and maybe the source material of it being from Ant-Man 2, a film that no one would ever expect to copy, not because it's bad, but because it's Ant-Man 2. It didn't really make a splash. It's there as connective tissue. And it's better used in this one. Not that they used it incorrectly in Ant-Man 2, it's just because that film kind of didn't mean anything except as connective tissue, whereas this is a part of a major relaunch to try to save this sinking-ass ship. it just works better. It has more meaning, and while both are performed perfectly well, Nicole Kidman just seems a little more intense in the role, while still being a little more complicated dimensionally as a character. Not very. These are tertiary characters, but you know they're part of the motivation of the main character, the Aquaman. Aquaman. We also see some wonderful character and development theft, borrowing, whatever. And I mean stealing, again, in the nicest way possible. This is a success because they decided to outright take elements that worked in other places and filtered it through the Aquaman lens. Water filter. Purification. And put it through the Brita filter, that is Aquaman. It just comes out working in their favor. This is true as well with the character of Black Manta, who is more or less Killmonger but without the politics. Or at least the politics are vaguely there, but they're just kind of like alluded to in the past. Ocean Master is more or less the evil brother, evil dictator, but he's given a little bit more complexity by not actually being evil. There's a moment near the end, I'm not going to spoil it, where you'd expect his character to be a cliche and go one way, and instead goes a completely different way, because it makes sense for the character at that point. He's a guy who was raised to be king. He may not be king via the line of legitimacy, but he's ruled for a bit. He has been brought up and everyone expected him to become king. So he's not some complete evil jerk-off. He's just kind of a shithead in the way kings are, not a shithead in the way Macbeth would be. And everyone, when they're underwater, are covered in this film of CGI that actually kind of works. You know that you're watching, you know that the vast majority of this film is just CGI with maybe a little pasted Momoa going zoo, zoo, zoo through the ocean and around whales and everything. And almost every set, by nature of them having to swim around it, but not look like they're holding their breath and be able to talk, is of course just CGI and wires. And that could have gone horrible. That really could have gone horrible. We've seen that go terrible in so many films. The Star Wars prequels, the Hobbit films, which I'm currently actually rewatching and will probably give a video essay on, because I feel like it's been, well, the extended versions anyway, have been unfairly targeted for quality. Sure, they don't stand up to Lord of the Rings, but anyway, we'll get into that. But because everything is underwater and very fantastic, like this truly is a fantasy film, made all the better by the presence of a bearded, armored up Dolph Lundgren underwater, being very, very serious, and it is fantastic. This film is a lot like Flash Gordon in that it goes wholesale for it, and it doesn't care if you're not along. It manages to mix up a wonderful 80s synth track with the typical bombastic orchestra you would expect to hear in a comic book film from DC. And it presents you with a bit of a deeper dive, pun probably intended, into the world that is presenting than we got to see in Wakanda or Themyscira. This is partially aided by the way that Willem Dafoe plays his character as kind of like Aqua Alfred. Any other actor would probably put a little bit of menace into him, but he plays the Vizier as a truly benevolent character. And it's so fascinating to see Willem Dafoe do benevolent characters because, you know, he's Willem Dafoe. His characters may not be evil, but they're certainly somewhat menacing. And of course, this is a stark contrast to his other comic book film character. But none of the ham here. He is not hamming it up. He is doing what they should have done with John Kent. And of course, because this is not only a comic book film, but a James Wan film, it's very simplistic, but in an engaging way. It's like a good Saturday morning cartoon. Yes, it's for kids, and the characters are all kind of like cartoon characters, much like the Fast and the Furious characters are all clearly a Saturday morning cartoon for adults. The characterization is very simple. The plots are very simple. The villains are very simple. There are reoccurring characters. Oh, and don't go looking in Aquaman for many references to the DCU. I was half expecting at some point Batman or Wonder Woman to show up. Nope, not at all. And it actually works. You're so engaged in the Atlantean world and Aquaman and their history and lore and past and locations that you don't actually care if there is a Justice League out there. Though there is a mention of the Justice League. I think I recall. It has a very environmentalist message to it, but it's kind of delivered the same way that Star Trek The Voyage Home did it. It's not constantly slapping you going, don't be a polluter, don't be a polluter, you're being an asshole, you're being an asshole. It kind of makes it intrinsic to the plot, but it kind of makes it a piece of the plot. It becomes an essential but not primary part of the villain's master plan. And while the master plan is cartoonish, which is what I was talking about, I knew we'd get back to there. The way that James Wan does cartoonish in the Fast and the Furious films, this too is very cartoonish. It's very simplistic, but it's done in that same style and technique that you would do a fantasy film like Lord of the Rings, or you would do a sci-fi ridiculous film like Flash Gordon, in which you commit to everything. Everything is committed to. There is no half-ass. And it makes for a really rich, enjoyable experience to watch. It's not The Dark Knight. It's not The Dark Knight. It's not Spider-Man 1 or 2. But it's probably the best movie the DCEU has produced yet. It has heart. It's fun. It's outright enjoyable. The plot contrivances you don't actually mind. The stealing you don't actually mind. Everything just kind of works. And you have a really good time. And I haven't had a good time watching a DC film in a while. Justice League was a slog. Wonder Woman was good, but a commitment. You had to watch that shit. You had to watch it. Batman vs. Superman was... We'll get back to Batman vs. Superman. And Man of Steel broke my heart. That wasn't right. That shit wasn't right. But Aquaman is. Aquaman is very good. It's not perfect. It's not the greatest comic book movie ever. But it's very good. And you will enjoy it. And you can take kids to it. Or you can go alone. Or you can go on a date. It really is the perfect film without being perfect.
Sherman, I just realized you insulted me. Now you will die.
Hey, Nutnick, your shoe's untied.
From here they appear to be tied, but I will go in for a closer look.
Taxi! To the airport!
On closer inspection, these are loafers.